آزادی بیان.
言论自由
Free speech.
I was just going to say that it strikes me so much listening to this how hard it is to separate general principles of what images you should or shouldn't be able to show and when and how you should be able to voice your discontent from whether or not the issue itself and whether you think it's right or wrong. Because, you know, for example, when you talked about the funeral that you protested at, that was an example where to the man's wife and children at the funeral, I'm sure that would have been perceived as harassment. But you felt that the issue and his using prostitution was wrong enough that in that case you were willing to make people uncomfortable, you know, because of that. And the tricky thing with the abortion thing is, you know, for a lot of us we don't think it's wrong, but I can recognise that for people who do genuinely believe that this is a wrong thing, that, you know, it is making people uncomfortable, it is harassing people, but they also think that it's wrong in the same way that we think other things are wrong. So I just think it's very hard to separate, it's very hard for any of us to talk about one general rule which applies without the issue itself, because in a way, you know, the purpose of protesting is to make people uncomfortable enough to change whatever it is that you think is happening that's wrong.
With Sebastian Horsley's funeral, and I knew Sebastian, I was invited to his funeral anyway. You know, what I wanted to protest was the way in which the funeral was being held, or was being conducted. So there isn't really any way of protesting how a funeral is conducted apart from at it. You know, it's difficult to find another way of accessing this. What these people are wanting to do, they're protesting, you know, really the law in this country. They want the law to be different. And for me, if you want the law to be different, you should be protesting your MP.
But is that, let's say, and I sound like I'm defending abortion, which I really, defending pro-life groups, which I'm really not. But for them, you know, the law used to be anti-slavery and anti-lots of things, and they genuinely feel that it's wrong. And so, you know, we wouldn't have said with slavery, like, go through your legal routes because slow and careful and legal things isn't what changes things. Like, people have to... So I'm just saying it depends so much on where you fall on the actual issue, what you think is acceptable as an avenue of protesting that.
That's pretty much the point you just made about the slavery thing is exactly what I was about to say. But ultimately, it does come down to intention. It does come down to actual basic empathy. I can empathise with the pro-choices. I can see where they're coming from on this. I've been in that position, so I know why they think the way they think, but I can also look at 40 Days for Life and actually ask them, going up to these people, actually asking them why they're doing this would be quite helpful actually in many people's cases. And I actually know that their intention here is not to harass women. You say, if you want to say, well, they know that some women find it harassing, well, there are all sorts of women who don't find it harassing. And in fact, there are a lot of women who are involved in 40 Days for Life who would say, well, if I were in a pregnancy situation here, I wouldn't find it harassing. As far as they're concerned, they are trying to give someone kindness, compassion and help. They're trying to help people. You might disagree with that, you might think it's entirely unfounded, but nonetheless that's what they're trying to do. They're not trying to harass people. And intention in this case, for me, is fundamentally important, as is basic empathy with your opponents, which I think is quite right, but lacking on the other side of this.
But let's just, because that's in a way going back to the same old argument, but just to take your funeral again, I mean, presumably his surviving relatives could have felt harassed by your protest.
Yeah, and they did, and they contacted the police, and the police moved me on, and yeah.
And you thought the police were wrong to move you on, or right to move you on?
I felt that, well, I mean, yeah, obviously I was there and I wanted to stay there, but I didn't argue with the police in the end, not least because I didn't have an afternoon to waste getting arrested and getting bailed, so I moved along when I was asked to. But yes, inevitably there were people who felt harassed by that, sure, and I felt that the point I was making... So how is that different? I mean, this is going to the question from the back. How is that different from the harassment you object to? Because, well, first of all, I wasn't accessing a medical service. I wasn't there to seek medical treatment to which I was legally entitled.
But my husband's or father's funeral is a fairly emotional moment.
They were trying to access the service of a funeral.
Well, and they were able to do so, yeah.
Yeah, but...
Yeah, and
no, but hang on, if you could just hold on a moment, because I just want to pursue this calmly, because it seems to me it's an important point, which is the one you were making from the back, which is that there may be, as it were, the same neutrally regarded act of harassment which we give a different moral weight to because of our judgment on the cause.
Well, absolutely. I quite agree that there is a way in which inevitably, when somebody's out there, when we see people out on the streets with the enormously homophobic messages out there, and I think that one of the reasons that this is so harassing is because it's sexist, is because it's directly attacking people's human rights. It's directly threatening people's ability to exercise their basic fundamental human rights. Incidentally, whoever is editing the video of this, I hope you'll put some ironic statement on the phrase "I can empathise" with. It just amazes me that we discuss harassing women seeking medical services, and a man without a uterus says, "I can empathise with these people."
That's not sexist at all, or question begging.